cosmos, space, and time travel, medicine, robotics, science, and technology. Professor Michio Kaku, theoretical physicist, graduated from Harvard University summa cum laude and first in his physics class. Received his PhD in physics from the University of California at Berkeley. And now, professor of physics at City University of New York for 30 years. His goal? To complete Einstein's dream of a theory of everything, to derive an equation, to summarize all the physical laws of the universe. The co-founder of string field theory, author of the international bestsellers Hyperspace, Visions, and Parallel Worlds, and voted as one of the 100 smartest people in New York, profiling the latest cutting-edge developments in science, which revolutionize our world and touch our lives. Now, Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku.
This is Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. On Science Fantastic, we profile the amazing, jaw-dropping scientific discoveries which are revolutionizing our world and touching our lives. And once again, in this hour, we're going to throw the lines open because this is your hour. This is the time when you can get to the phones and call and get on national radio. That's right. You can give us a call at 866-323-2129. All you have to do is leave your name, the call letters of the radio station you're listening to, and the city you're calling from. And perhaps you can get on over 100 radio stations that carry Science Fantastic. And also go to my website. It's mkaku.org, mkaku.org. It tells you what I'm up to. My Facebook site, we already have 2.7 million people following me on Facebook and 500,000 people on Twitter. So go to my website because it gives the tour schedule. For example, recently I was speaking in Los Angeles, and maybe I'll be speaking in a city next to you. So once again, this is Science Fantastic, and the lines are open. You can give us a call at 866-323-2129. Now, let me explain. You can call 24/7, anytime, day or night. You'll just get a recording asking you to leave your name, call letters of the radio station, and also the city you're calling from. And you can call at 4 o'clock in the morning. Let's say you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning because something is bothering you, something you've heard on the radio, seen on television, but hey, there's no one to talk to. Well, you can talk to me. You can give me a call and get on national radio, 866-323-2129. And you may want to check out my latest book. It's called The Future of the Mind, now in paperback form. 2 years ago, when it came out, it hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And now the book, The Future of the Mind, is available in paperback form. This is the book which summarizes some of the very latest developments when you apply physics to the architecture of the human mind. Did you know the United States Pentagon has dumped over $150 million hooking up the human brain to an exoskeleton so that the wounded warriors from Iraq and Afghanistan could now be able to bypass an injured spinal cord. Injuries which once were thought to be totally incurable were now making enormous headway as we connect the mind to a computer. A machine that allows you to control your wheelchair, allows you to send emails, play video games, and even walk, even though you are totally paralyzed. Not only that, but we can also send thoughts on the internet, and yes, this is a form of telepathy and telekinesis. By hooking up your thoughts to a computer, and the computer in turn controls appliances, you can actually move objects with the power of the human mind. Okay, well, moving right along, let's take the first listener phone call.
My name is Marshall. I'm calling from Pensacola, Florida. 1330 WEBY AM is the station. I'm calling to ask how Hiroshima and Nagasaki can be inhabited while it's going to take hundreds of years to inhabit the area around Chernobyl. Thank you.
Well, you ask a puzzling question that a lot of people have asked. If you ever visit Japan, visit Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They are vibrant metropolitan cities without a trace, hardly a trace, of the fact that an atomic bomb was dropped on both cities that basically incinerated about 100,000 people each. Where is the radioactive fallout? However, if you go to Chernobyl, it's the exact opposite situation. There are dead zones around the Chernobyl site where you are not allowed to trespass because of the potentially lethal quantities of radiation. What's the difference? Well, the atomic bomb has blast, it has heat, it is enormously destructive. However, it has actually very little fallout. And fallout is what's left over after the blast and the heat have since dissipated. First of all, Hiroshima and Nagasaki were both air bursts. They were bursts in the air above Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which in turn maximizes the damage that you create, but minimizes the fallout. Where does fallout come from? Two places. Fallout comes from, first, radioactive dirt, which is then vaporized and flung high into the atmosphere where it rains down on the public. And second of all, bomb parts. The parts of the atomic bomb themselves become highly irradiated with neutrons and therefore create radioactive isotopes like strontium, cesium, and iodine. So we have two sources of fallout which can last for decades, and we had neither in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Lots of blast, lots of heat, tremendous devastation, lots of injuries, but very little fallout because they were both air bursts. On the other hand, the Chernobyl reactor took place because the top blew off the reactor, and something like 20 to 30% of the core inventory was then vaporized and sent into the atmosphere, creating a huge radioactive cloud that scientists have traced that sailed over large portions of Europe. That's why we have dead zones surrounding Chernobyl, because the half-life of cesium and strontium are on the order of 30 years. Therefore, it's radioactive for perhaps 10 times that, or 300 years. So already we see the devastation that took place at Chernobyl, and it's never ending. You realize the accident at Chernobyl is still going on? The core is unstable, even though it was back in 1986 that the core basically exploded and blew its top with a hydrogen gas explosion and a steam explosion. So realize that the core is unstable and it is still melting into the earth. Now, Chernobyl, the accident at Fukushima, took place 5 years ago, and that accident is still ongoing. TEPCO has admitted that it would take 30 to 40 years. That's the official estimate of the utility. 30 to 40 years to clean up the mess. Now there we don't have radioactive fallout so much because most of the radiation was contained within the dome of the building, while at Chernobyl the dome blew off and we had an open core, a core that was openly exposed to the outside environment. But at Fukushima, we have radioactive water. Radioactive water that constantly is filling up swimming pools of radioactive vats, and a lot of it is dumped into the Pacific Ocean. This is causing a lot of consternation among the people in the area. Now, you may say to yourself, why is this important? It's important because, well, terrorism is in the news. And did you know that the bombers that blew up the train station and the airport in Brussels, that they also plotted a dirty bomb attack? This is astounding. People have talked about the possibility of nuclear terrorism for many a decade, but now we can actually see the initial efforts by the terrorists in Belgium to actually detonate a dirty bomb. And then this whole difference between Hiroshima and Chernobyl becomes very important, because a dirty bomb is pure fallout. No blast, no heat, but 100% fission products like iodine, cesium, and strontium, which gets into the food chain, gets into your body, causes cancer and all sorts of other horrible diseases. And so we have a situation where, yes, the terrorists are not stupid. They have a learning curve, and now they're beginning to realize that they can maximize the devastation and horror by simply releasing a dirty bomb. We know, for example, last November, that they actually tape recorded for 10 hours the movements of a top nuclear official. Now, why would you do that? Why would you secretly videotape the comings and goings of a top nuclear official unless, of course, you wanted to kidnap him or perhaps blackmail him or perhaps use him as some kind of a helper to attack a nuclear power plant? And we also know, before the incident in the Brussels airport, we now know that there was a security guard at a nuclear facility who was killed. And what did the assailant want? Did they want his wallet and money? No. All they wanted was his security badge. That's all they wanted. In other words, they wanted to use that badge to sabotage a nuclear power plant, releasing not heat, not blast, but pure radioactive fallout in a populated area. It makes you really want to think twice about nuclear terrorism. Okay, well, let's take a short commercial break, and after the break, we're going to continue Science Fantastics listener phone calls. So give us a call. The hotline number is 866-323-2129. Give us a call and share your thoughts on National Radio. Give us a call.
Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. For more information on this and other great talk programs, go to talkradionetwork.com.
Hi, this is DV Kidd. My new book, Taking Politics Out of Solutions, is now available. Why is it nothing changes no matter who you vote for? My book covers the most critical issues eating this country alive, as well as the solutions that are already there that Congress and the agenda-driven media don't want you to know. From the disaster of our economy, why we will never have economic freedom until the Fed is abolished, trade, the meltdown underway called Obamacare, the truth about Social Security and Medicare, and the fraudulent ratification of the 17th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. A very huge issue that affects every American. The answers and solutions are in my book, all Americans need to read because the worst is coming at us like a freight train. To order, go to www.newswithviews.com.
You wouldn't dare build a house without a blueprint, and neither should you invest without a plan. Hi, Sam Sorbo here. My good friends at Landmark Capital specialize in tailor-made portfolios called Your Financial Blueprint. Let Landmark Capital show you how to control your retirement and safeguard your money from government seizure, protect it from an upcoming recession, and maximize your financial growth in case of inflation. Landmark Capital can show you how to put physical metals, gold and silver, into your IRA or 401k and take physical possession today. Your 401k IRA is a ticking time bomb. The government's racked up our debt to $18 trillion, and there's currently $18.2 trillion in retirement. 12 different countries have already seized their citizens' assets like bank and retirement accounts, and it can happen here any day now, according to the Federal Reserve. Get the facts. Call 855-747-5947, 855-747-5947, or find them at landmarkgold.com. Call 855-747-5947, or visit landmarkgold.com.
Hi, folks. GetTheTea.com is the place where the popular Life Change tea calls home. But did you know Get the Tea is also where you can purchase GMO-free organic supplements? You can read about their potent power at GetTheTea.com. Also, they just added a YouTube channel called Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. Education about our health can be a life change. Maybe that's why our famous tea is called Life Change Tea. Learn about the trees for life. Our supplements have no fillers, no wheat, no rice, no garbage. And our tea is wow to the body. Make a conscious health change. Educate yourself on the most powerful essence of life, which is your health. You want more? Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Or visit our YouTube channel at Health Matters Now. That's Health matters now. And don't forget our fabulous mild detox tea at getthetea.com.
Here is Professor Michio Kaku.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. On Science Fantastic, we are taking your phone calls. That's right. Here is your chance to ask that question, make that comment that you always wanted to but never had the courage or never had the opportunity. Give us a call. The hotline number is 866-323-2129. All we ask of you is that you leave your name, the call letters of the radio station, and the city you're calling from. And perhaps you can have your thoughts heard on over 100 radio stations that carry Science Fantastic. And remember, sometimes the so-called dumb, stupid questions, sometimes they are the deepest and most profound of all. When Albert Einstein, for example, was 16 years old, he asked a question which would later change world history. And that is, can you outrace a light beam? So a question that even a 16-year-old child could ask, a question that most people would laugh at, when you actually answer the question of can you outrace a light beam, you get insights into the stars, the atomic bomb, the miracles that we see in our living room with the internet and computers and laptops, all of that emerging from a simple question that a child would ask, can you outrace a light beam? The answer, by the way, is no. You cannot go faster than the speed of light. But to show that, you have to create what is called relativity. Okay, well, moving right along, let's take the next listener phone call.
Yes, my name's Steve, calling from Camdenton, Missouri, KRMS. I was just wondering if how in the world they determine the distance of they just discovered not a galaxy, but I guess a galaxy 14.2 billion miles away. How do they determine that distance?
Okay, well, you ask a very interesting question, and that is, astronomers often say that a certain planet or star is billions of light years away, but how do they know that? I mean, you can't get a meter stick and measure these incredible distances. How do they do that? Well, they use a series of methods by which you can calculate the distances to these far objects. If you have, for example, a nearby star, we use something called parallax. That is, if you move your head to the left or to the right, you realize that objects close to you seem to move a lot, but objects very far away, like the distant trees, the mountains, they don't move at all. So when you move your head left and right, by moving your head enough, you can actually show that nearby objects move a lot, but far objects hardly move at all. Even the Greeks knew this. In fact, the Greeks, of course, invented trigonometry to calculate things like this. And astronomers were the first to calculate the distance to the nearby stars. We know, for example, that when you move your head to the left and right, you can only move your head perhaps a foot. However, to move a telescope, to measure parallax of a star, you would have to move the telescope millions of miles, because these stars are in principle billions of miles away. So what is the farthest distance you can move a telescope? Well, if you take a picture of the night sky in summertime and a picture of the same night sky in wintertime, you are in opposite ends of the orbit of the Earth. You have, in fact, moved your telescope 2 times 92 million miles. And so that is the farthest distance that you can easily move a telescope, almost 200 million miles. Then using trigonometry, you can calculate that if a picture of a star seems to move from summer to winter, bingo, you can calculate how far it is. And so this was actually done in the 1800s, and that gave us the first estimates of the nearby stars. Now, far away stars, much farther than that, you have a problem. And that is that a star that's close to you may be just as bright as a very bright star far away from you. Just like a headlight. When you see a headlight coming your way, it's very difficult to judge the distance to a headlight because maybe the headlight is dim and close to you, or very bright and far away. And so for that, we have to use what are called variable stars. We need a standard candle. And the standard candle is a variable star. We know that these variable stars are the same throughout the universe. And we use the dimness of a variable star to calculate how far it is away. Now you're talking about galaxies that are billions of light years away. Then we have to use a combination of other methods to calculate distances that far away. First of all, we use supernovae. That is, exploding stars. Type 1a supernovae are the same throughout the universe. They are the standard candle. That's one way of doing it. But for objects that are really far away, we use yet another standard called Hubble's law. That is, Hubble, the great astronomer, showed that the farther a star is, the faster it moves away from us. Now, we can measure the speed of a star very simply by using what is called the Doppler effect. If you ever got a speeding ticket because the police had Doppler radar attuned to your car, you know how effective Doppler radar can be. Objects that move away from you, the frequency of light and sound is lowered. If an object is coming toward you, the light or the sound is squashed in the forward direction and the pitch is higher. Now, you've heard this all your life, except you never knew what it was. It sounds like this. Now, all your life, you've heard that ever since you were a child, but you never knew that it had a name. The effect of that is, when an object goes toward you, light and sound are compressed. That's called the Doppler shift, and that allows you to calculate how fast a star is moving. Then, using Hubble's law, we can now show that it's related to how far the object is. So anyway, just to repeat, there are many ways of calculating the distance to the stars and galaxies. All of them merge to give you a universal yardstick. And that's why we're very confident in believing many of the cosmological statements that you hear in the press that give us the fact that the universe is expanding. Okay, well, let's move right on and take the next listener phone call.
Dr. Kaku, I was wondering, speaking of other dimensions, would it be like you see in science fiction movies where you possibly have our planet and then it would be the same as our planet in another dimension with just subtle differences? I was wondering how you could explain that one to me. Thank you.
Well, if you're a Star Trekkie, fans of Star Trek know that there was one episode where there was a parallel universe where everyone was evil. The Federation of Planets was like the Roman Empire, plundering planets rather than liberating them. And Spock had a beard in this parallel universe. And William Shatner, instead of being the noble warrior he is in the Federation, turns out to be a sex-crazed maniac. Well, that depiction is obviously not correct because he's a sex-crazed maniac in both universes. Well, that started the myth that perhaps there's an evil twin of our universe, a parallel universe. And, well, let's take a short commercial break. But after the break, we'll talk about parallel universes. This is taken very seriously by physicists now, something that was once the province of paranormal people and psychics and science fiction writers is now dead center in the world of physics, my world. So after the break, we're going to talk about parallel universes. Is there an evil Spock lurking in another parallel universe? And again, the hotline number is 866-323-2129. Give us a call and you can be on Science Fantastic.
Does he know about string theory? He wrote the book on it. You're listening to Science Fantastic. Professor Michio Kaku.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. The lines are open in this hour. Well, once again, you can be part of the action. You can be part of the fun by giving us a call at 866-323-2129. All we ask is that you leave your name, the call letters of your radio station, and the city you're calling from when you make your comment or question about science. Well, before the commercial break, we had a question about parallel universes. Is there an evil twin to our universe? What would it look like to enter a parallel universe? Well, the leading theory of cosmology today is called string theory. That doesn't mean it's correct, of course. We have to test the theory, and it's very hard to test parallel universes. However, the leading theory that goes beyond Einstein is something called string theory. String theory is what I do for a living. It's where my paycheck comes from. Working for the city of New York, they pay me to work on string theory. And string theory, in turn, goes far beyond Einstein's theory. Einstein gives us this picture that the universe is a bubble that's expanding. That's called the Big Bang Theory. And we live on the skin of the bubble. But string theory says there are other bubbles out there, other universes. And string theory actually says that these other universes could actually obey different physical laws. That's right, the so-called laws of physics that we think are universal throughout the universe. Well, we now believe that they're universal in our sector of the universe. But perhaps there are neighboring bubbles with different physics. So in other words, what we consider the laws of physics, the laws of common sense, that we have stars and planets and galaxies and people and DNA, that's just common sense in our universe, right? But perhaps in another universe, there are no galaxies, there are no atoms, there is no DNA, there are no people, but perhaps bizarre forms of life could also exist. We don't know, because of course we still have to prove this theory, and then we have to do calculations. However, I should point out that the recent discovery of gravity waves has now recently invigorated the claims that we should put these gravity wave detectors in outer space. The largest source of gravity waves in the universe is not colliding black holes. That was picked up a few months ago. However, the largest source of gravity waves in the universe is Genesis itself. The creation of the universe. In the Bible, it talks about chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, we think there was a tremendous shock wave which created the universe. Reverberations from that same shock wave are still reverberating around the universe, and they could be picked up by space-based gravity wave detectors. The Europeans and the United States both have plans to put these gravity wave telescopes in outer space to pick up not just light, but to pick up gravity waves from the instant of creation itself. And then by running the videotape backwards, we'll be able to see where the universe itself came from. According to string theory, our universe may have come from another parallel universe. In other words, when bubbles collide, you get a bigger bubble. That could be a Big Bang. Or when bubbles pinch and create a baby bubble, perhaps that's the Big Bang. And so this whole question of parallel universes is now becoming center stage as we begin to realize that, well, maybe not now, but in the next generation of gravity wave detectors could be in outer space. And they may allow us to experimentally verify the existence of parallel universes. And then, of course, everyone wants to know the answer to the question, is Elvis Presley still alive in another parallel universe? Is Spock really with a beard? And Captain Kirk, is he really a sex-craved maniac in a parallel universe? Well, I don't know. But at least we will have the experimental data to prove this theory correct or incorrect, perhaps in the next generation of gravity wave detectors to be based in outer space. Okay, well, moving right along, let's take the next listener phone call.
This is Robert in Chattanooga, Tennessee, WGOW. And my question is, how do you investigate the origins of string theory? Is it basically just mathematics, or how do you do that? Thank you very much.
Well, you ask a rather embarrassing question because we don't know where it comes from. String theory was discovered pretty much by accident back in 1968. Two physicists, Gabriel Veneziano and Mahiko Suzuki, were thumbing through a math book of all things and came across a rather ingenious formula that seemed to fit the collision of pi mesons. Now, science is not supposed to be done this way. Science is usually done when you have careful observations of data, reams and reams of data, and then you make a hypothesis to explain the data, and then you go back to the drawing board and get more data points. No, this was a leap of logic. And then when people realized why did this formula have such magical properties, we realized that it was caused by the collision of two strings. And that set into motion the superstring revolution. Working backwards, we found out that the lowest octave of this vibrating string was all of Einstein's theory. This is incredible. Imagine discovering all of Einstein's theory by accident. It turns out that the lowest octave, the lowest vibrations of the string, contained all of Einstein's theory of general relativity. And at that point, we said to ourselves, oh my God, we discovered a theory by accident, a theory which seems to give us a possibility of explaining creation itself. Well, let's take another short commercial break, and after the break, I'll say a few things about where string theory might come from. We don't know the answer to that question, but is it pure mathematics? Well, we'll find out after the commercial break.
You're listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. For more information on this and other great talk programs, go to talkradionetwork.com.
Spread the word. Now there is powerful nutritional support for migraine sufferers. It's estimated that 35 million people suffer with migraines. Are you or a family member one of them? Well, now there is MigRelief by Akeso Health Sciences. MigRelief is a safe and healthy, non-prescription dietary supplement recommended by neurologists, pharmacists, and pediatricians to address the nutritional deficiencies in both adults and children over 2 with migraines. Just take 2 capsules a day of MigRelief for 3 months and see the amazing difference it can make in your life, or get your money back. No questions asked. There's nothing to lose. Akeso Health Sciences MigRelief has been helping people just like you for 20 years. Try MigRelief and get your life back risk-free with just one call. Call 1-800-MIG-7354, 1-800-MIG-7354, or go to MIG911.com.
You wouldn't dare build a house without a blueprint, and neither should you invest without a plan. Hi, Sam Sorbo here. My good friends at Landmark Capital specialize in tailor-made portfolios called Your Financial Blueprint. Let Landmark Capital show you how to control your retirement and safeguard your money from government seizure, protect it from an upcoming recession, and maximize your financial growth in case of inflation. Landmark Capital can show you how to put physical metals, gold and silver, into your IRA or 401k and take physical possession today. Your 401k IRA is a ticking time bomb. The government's racked up our debt to $18 trillion, and there's currently $18.2 trillion in retirement. 12 different countries have already seized their citizens' assets like bank and retirement accounts, and it can happen here any day now, according to the Federal Reserve. Get the facts. Call 855-747-5947, 855-747-5947, or find them at landmarkgold.com. Call 855-747-5947 or visit landmarkgold.com.
Hello. My name is Roy Masters. I'm an English veteran who's been witness to history and proud to become an American citizen. Because in America, free thought was encouraged and being truthful mattered more than being nice. My America was truly politically incorrect in all the best ways, which is why we were blessed. But things have changed, and Americans don't think American anymore. Even though I still speak with an English accent, my heart thinks American. My voice speaks American. And that is freedom. Please join me on my daily radio show Advice Line, Monday through Friday, and I will help you to reclaim our country. Let me help you find the courage to think and speak American again. Please download my radio show app, available now at the Apple App Store and Android Google Play. Thank you.
The Foundation of Human Understanding is a 501c3 church.
Kaku. Well, we had a question before the commercial break, and that is, well, where did string theory come from? Well, let me explain. After 2,000 years of investigation into the laws of physics, we have come up with two theories that explain everything we know about the physical universe. Amazing. Two theories summarizes everything we know about the physical universe. The first, of course, is Einstein's theory, the theory of relativity that gives us big bangs and black holes, has been experimentally tested billions and billions of times. Every time we smash atoms, we have to use Einstein's theory to explain what happens when protons collide. And then we have the quantum theory, the theory of subatomic particles, the theory that makes possible transistors, lasers, that makes possible atomic bombs, stars, all the intricacies of atomic physics summarized in the quantum theory. And the problem is these two theories don't like each other. They're based on different pictures, different mathematics, and how could nature be so perverse to give us two entirely different theories? Well, it turns out one theory can combine these two into a single theory, and that is string theory. In string theory, each vibration is a subatomic particle, and therefore the notes are the quantum particles like the electron and the protons, and so string theory is automatically a quantum theory. Second of all, the lowest octave of the string is all of Einstein's theory of general relativity. If Einstein himself had never been born, we would have discovered relativity anyway as a byproduct of the first octave of string theory. Amazing. In some sense, we didn't have to have Einstein. Of course, the fact that he gave us a theory cut decades and decades off wandering in the wilderness to give us a theory of everything. But it turns out that string theory contains Einstein's theory as just the first note. And then the caller asks the question, well, where does string theory come from? Is it just pure mathematics? Well, actually, that's what I'm doing now. I'm trying to figure out the answer to that question. Why strings? Why is this the only theory which has survived every single challenge? Every single challenge has people have tried to dent the armor of string theory. Each time string theory survives, and in fact it is the only theory, I repeat, the only theory which has survived every single challenge so far. Now that doesn't mean it's correct, because we have to have experimental proof. Now, of course, the laws of physics as we know them are byproducts of string theory. But we want new predictions. Well, string theory predicts new particles, and we think that dark matter could be precisely these particles that nail the theory to the wall. Okay, well, let's take a short commercial break, and after the break, we're going to continue with Open Mic on Science Fantastic. That's right, here's your chance to call 866-323-2129. Ask that question. Make that comment that you've always wanted to make. Here's your chance. The number again is 866-323-2129.
You're listening to Science Fantastic.
With Professor Michio Kaku. The lines are open. This hour is your hour. This is the time when you can get to the phones and have your thoughts heard on over 100 radio stations that carry Science Fantastic. That's right. You can give us a call at 866-323-2129. Okay, well, moving right along, let's move on and take the next listener phone call.
Hey, if I'm traveling in a car at the speed of light and I turn my headlights on, what happens? WCHS, Charleston, West Virginia. See ya.
Well, the short answer to your question, what happens if you're traveling near the speed of light and turn on a flashlight, is inside the rocket, nothing happens. It's just normal. Now, you may say to yourself, well, that can't be right, because inside the rocket, the light beam is traveling at the speed of light. Everything seems normal. But the rocket ship itself is moving near the speed of light and should have a boost. Therefore, the light beam should be traveling twice twice the speed of light. Well, believe it or not, these experiments have been done. And every time Einstein is right. The speed of light is the same no matter where your rocket, no matter how fast your rocket is moving. How can that be? Common sense tells you that velocities add. For example, if you're on one of these moving walkways at an airport or a department store and you run along the moving pathway, then of course your net velocity is increased because you got a boost. However, light is different. Light travels at the same velocity no matter how and where you move. How can that be? Well, Einstein asked himself that question for 10 years, from the time he was 16 years old to the time he was 26 years old. And then in the spring of 1905, he finally got it. He said it was like a storm that broke in my mind. And then he realized the solution to the question is time slows down the faster you move. Time itself is not absolute. It's relative. Now you may say to yourself, well, that's preposterous. 2 o'clock here is 2 o'clock everywhere in the universe. No. Clocks beat at different rates. How do we know this? Well, take out your cell phone. Your cell phone has a GPS system which talks to satellites, and satellites, because they travel at 18,000 miles per hour, time beats slower in outer space than it does on the Earth. And therefore the GPS system would totally fail if it wasn't for Einstein's theory of special relativity, which says that the speed of light is the same no matter how you try to measure it. Time beats faster on the moon than it does on the Earth. Time beats slower on Jupiter than it does on the planet Earth. And we have to make tiny corrections for this when we use the GPS system. It's kind of ironic that Pentagon generals cannot fight wars unless they're briefed on the intricacies of Einstein's general and special theory of relativity. And so that's the answer to the question. How can it be that velocities do not add? And the reason is you measure velocities by using clocks, by using stopwatches. But if your stopwatches run slower, then obviously time and space and velocities have to be readjusted. And then you ask the next question, well, why don't we observe that? If everything is slowing down, wouldn't we feel the effects of time slowing down? No, because your brain is also slowing down. If your brain slows down and your clock slows down, then everything seems normal. So inside the rocket, traveling near the speed of light, by turning on a flashlight, what happens? Nothing. It's just as if you are at rest and the light beam is traveling at the speed of light. This violates common sense. But hey, who cares about your common sense? This is correct. We've measured it millions of times with our atom smashers, with the space program. Every time Einstein's theory comes right on the dot. Why? We're not quite sure, but that's just the way the universe is, independent of your common sense. Okay, well, moving right along, let's take the next listener phone call.
Yes, my name is Josh Hyde, and I'm calling from Chattanooga, Tennessee, listening to 102.3 Talk Radio. And I was wondering if you knew anything about subconscious abduction, because I have dreams, and sometimes I feel as though in my dreams I'm being tested and challenged and taken to places I feel like I've been before. And I was wondering if you have ever heard of anything along the lines of subconscious abduction. Thank you.
Well, now we have brain scans that can once and for all settle many of the questions about dreaming, which was once thought to be totally beyond the realm of physics and chemistry. Well, by analyzing blood flow in the brain, and blood flow in turn corresponds to electrical activity in the brain, we can actually see what's turned on and off in a dream and why dreams are the way they are. First of all, your prefrontal cortex is turned off. That's your thinking conscious part of the brain. Blood drains away from your prefrontal cortex. And also your fact checker right behind your eyeballs is also turned off, your orbital frontal cortex as it's called. And so in other words, logic is thrown out the window. fact checkers that say, hey, that's not quite right. That's also thrown out the window because blood no longer flows in these areas. However, where does the blood flow in your brain? It flows, first of all, into the amygdala, which is the center of emotions and nightmares. It turns out many of the nightmares are concentrated in the amygdala. And then you find that memories are also energized by the recirculated blood flows. And this is the reason why dreams consist of fragments of memories. Yes, we can actually see that. And that's where we have all these bizarre memories coming from. Fragments that are stitched together with no rhyme or reason that make any sense at all, with fact checkers thrown out the window. That's why dreams are so bizarre. And if you read my book, you'll realize that perhaps it's good that it's that way. It helped our survival in the forest. Well, unfortunately, that's it for Science Fantastic. Join us every week by giving us a call at 866-323-2129 and share your thoughts on National Radio when we profile some of the cutting-edge areas of modern science. So once again, this is Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku.
You're listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. Black holes, the cosmos, space, and time travel, medicine, robotics, science, and technology. Professor Michio Kaku, theoretical physicist, graduated from Harvard University summa cum laude and first in his physics class. Received his PhD in physics from the University of California at Berkeley. And now, a professor of physics at City University of New York for 30 years. His goal? To complete Einstein's dream of a theory of everything, to derive an equation, to summarize all the physical laws of the universe. The co-founder of string field theory, author of the international bestsellers Hyperspace, Visions, and Parallel Worlds, and voted as one of the 100 smartest people in New York, profiling the latest cutting-edge developments in science, which revolutionize our world and touch our lives. Now, Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. On Science Fantastic, we profile the amazing, jaw-dropping scientific discoveries which are revolutionizing our world and touching our lives. And in this hour, we're going to talk about one of the most indispensable devices that we use literally every day without even thinking about it, and that's the GPS system. A system that allows you to calculate where you are on the Earth anywhere from anywhere by logging on to satellites in outer space. Our special guest today is Greg Milner. He's the author of a new book about the GPS system called Pinpoint, How GPS is Changing Technology, Culture, and Our Minds. He's the author of a previous book called Perfecting Sound Forever. And he's written for Wired, New York Magazine, Slate, Village Voice, Salon Spin, and Rolling Stone Magazine. So we'll be talking about the origin, the purpose, how it works. And what about this Pokemon craze that's gripped the planet, as everyone seems to want to locate objects by running into the streets? So we'll talk about the darker side of the technology. What happens when China, Russia, the Europeans, they all want their own GPS systems. And once again, if you want to know what I've been up to, go to my website, mkaku.org, mkaku.org. And on Facebook, we're up to 3 million fans on Facebook. On Twitter, we're up to 500,000 fans on Twitter. And if you go to my website, you'll find out where I'll be speaking. I've written 3 New York Times bestsellers, Physics of the Impossible, about time travel, about teleporters, about all the stuff you see in Star Trek, for example. And then Physics of the Future, about the next 50 to 100 years. What will robots look like? What about rocket ships? How are we going to live in the future? And then my latest book is called The Future of the Mind, about how physics is now teasing apart the mysteries of the living mind. We're talking about telepathy, telekinesis, recording memories, all of it we can now do in the laboratory. So go to my website, mkaku.org, mkaku.org. Well, once again, with us today is Greg Milner. He'll be coming on in just a few moments, talking about the GPS system. First of all, we have numerous satellites orbiting outer space. At any given time, your cell phone receives signals from up to 4 satellites in outer space. You just need 4 satellites, and then you use something called the Doppler shift. You see, when a satellite comes toward you, the frequencies are compressed as they come toward you, and as a consequence, the frequency is higher pitched. When a satellite moves away from you, it's lower pitched because the radio waves are stretched as they move away from you. If this was sound waves, it would sound like this. Now, you've heard that all your life. All your life you heard that, but maybe you didn't know what that was. That's called the Doppler shift. So when a car moves toward you, pitch is compressed and higher. When a car whizzes past you and sound is lowered, that's because sound is stretched as the car moves away from you. The same thing happens with radio. When a radio emitting satellite moves toward you, waves are compressed. In fact, we can measure precisely the amount of compression, and by logging on to 4 satellites, you can triangulate where you are on the surface of the Earth. And bingo, that's how you do it. Now, you may say to yourself, well, what about Einstein? I mean, isn't Einstein's theory showing that all that stuff has to be warped? And the answer is yes. Therefore, even the GPS system has to be modified to take into account Einstein's theory of special and general relativity. This is incredible if you think about it. The GPS system is so accurate, and we depend upon it to fight wars and locate missing children. It's so accurate that Pentagon generals have to use Einstein's theory of general relativity in order to calculate corrections to the GPS system, or else it don't work. That's how powerful the GPS system is, that you even have to go down to relativistic corrections. You actually have to use Einstein's theory to locate where you are on this map. Now, anything that's sensitive, of course, is going to be the subject of all sorts of intrigues by the superpowers and by enemy nations. So we'll talk about what other countries are doing when they try to field their own GPS system. Well, once again, you are listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. Give us a call. The hotline number is 866-323-2129.
You're listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. For more information on this and other great talk programs, go to talkradionetwork.com.
Hi, this is DV Kidd. My new book, Taking Politics Out of Solutions, is now available. Why is it nothing changes no matter who you vote for? My book covers the most critical issues eating this country alive, as well as the solutions that are already there that Congress and the agenda-driven media don't want you to know. From the disaster of our economy, why we will never have economic freedom until the Fed is abolished, trade, the meltdown underway called Obamacare, the truth about Social Security and Medicare, and the fraudulent ratification of the 17th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, a very huge issue that affects every American. The answers and solutions are in my book, all Americans need to read because the worst is coming at us like a freight train. To order, go to www.newswithviews.com.
Spread the word. Now there is powerful nutritional support for migraine sufferers. It's estimated that 35 million people suffer with migraines. Are you or a family member one of them? Well, now there is MigRelief by Akeso Health Sciences. MigRelief is a safe and healthy, non-prescription dietary supplement recommended by neurologists, pharmacists, and pediatricians to address the nutritional deficiencies in both adults and children over 2 with migraines. Just take 2 capsules a day of MigRelief for 3 months and see the amazing difference it can make in your life, or get your money back. No questions asked. There's nothing to lose. Akeso Health Sciences MigRelief has been helping people just like you for 20 years. Try MigRelief and get your life back risk-free with just one call. Call 1-800-MIG-7354, 1-800-MIG-7354, or go to MIG911.com.
Having a place to go after school will make you a better student. Having an outlet to express yourself will make you a better artist. Having something to do together will make you a better family. At The Y, we're helping build better friends, listeners, writers, swimmers, scientists, and musicians, one chance at a time. Give the gift of opportunity. Donate to The Y at ymca.net/give. The Y, for a better us.
Hello, here I am, Roy Masters, 55 years on talk radio and still saving lives. Please continue helping the Foundation of Human Understanding by simply donating $19.95 per month. Paying it forward plan will continue saving lives into the years to come. I'm a pioneer in helping our troops to overcome the ravages of PTSD without drugs. Go to FHU.com and then click on the donation page. That's FHU.com.
The Foundation of Human Understanding is a 501c3 church.
You're listening to Science Fantastic.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. In this hour, we're going to talk about a technology that is so indispensable that we don't even think about it. But there it is in outer space, a high-tech device that is indispensable for the economy and your life. We're talking about the GPS systems, one of the great successes of modern technology. And with us today to talk about that is Greg Milner. He's the author of a new book called Pinpoint: How GPS is Changing Technology, Culture, and Our Minds. He's the author of a previous book, Perfecting Sound Forever, which was a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award, and his work has appeared in Wired, New York Magazine, Slate, Village Voice, Salon Spin, and Rolling Stone. So, Greg, glad you could be on Science Fantastic.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
Well, first question for you is, how did you first get interested in technology and writing, and eventually writing about the GPS program?
Well, at first it began with, I used to be a journalist covering mostly music, and I realized that what seemed to be most interesting about music was how it was the science behind it, how it was recorded, and the choices that were made when recording it. A long time ago, I was a graduate student in anthropology at NYU, and I wrote a master's thesis on the transition from analog to digital recording technologies in the music industry. After I transitioned away from that, it was a few years ago, and I started to realize that GPS was kind of ubiquitous. I mean, it was starting to migrate onto our phones, and it seemed like everybody used it in some way, shape, or form, but nobody, myself included, that I talked to seemed to know what GPS was. I wasn't sure if it was a specific technology or just a general description of types of technologies or who was behind it. So I set out to go looking for basically those two answers, like what was GPS and who was behind it, who was controlling it. And the more I learned, it was kind of like peeling an onion. Just when I thought I'd sort of discovered the limit of what GPS was being used for, I'd find something else.
Well, you know, GPS, of course, is a multi-billion-dollar system of satellites in outer space. And then the question is, well, who paid for it? And was GPS invented just so that mothers can find their wayward children, or so that campers wouldn't get lost in the forest? I mean, who actually bankrolled GPS?
Well, GPS is wholly owned and operated by the United States federal government, specifically the Department of Defense. The day-to-day operations are run by the United States Air Force out of a Schriever Air Force Base outside of Colorado Springs, Colorado. It was originally designed basically as a military tool. I mean, there were some precursors to GPS done by the Navy, but the real GPS program, GPS as we know it today, began as an Air Force program in the early 70s. And there was always supposed to be a civilian component to it. That was always a precondition for its funding. But it was really designed as a way to, the way that Brad Parkinson, the Air Force colonel who really launched the program, put it, he wanted to find a way to drop 5 bombs in the same hole. He had some experience in Vietnam during the air campaign, and he was really dismayed by how indiscriminate bombing was. was there. And so in his mind, you can debate whether this is, true or not, but he saw that GPS as being a way to wage war more humanely because bombs could be dropped where they really should be dropped, not wherever.
Now, we all have images of World War II that we learned in school and we see on old reruns on television, specifically the bombing of Dresden and the firebombing of Tokyo, which caused enormous, absolutely catastrophic human casualties. Was it because people were simply evil and malevolent and wanted to incinerate people, or is it because our bombs simply were not accurate?
Well, I think it's somewhere in between the two. I mean, I think what happened in World War II was certain choices were made. I know that there was a little bit of an emphasis on precision bombing in the earlier air campaigns, and it was decided that that was not worth the risk because, pilots put themselves more at risk when they did things like that. So, like you said, there were these things that were caused by just, really just indiscriminate bombing. The way Brad Parkinson put it to me is that he was really aware of what happened in Vietnam. And in fact, what he saw happen, what happened in World War II, and what he saw happening in Vietnam was a repeat of that. And he used to say, like, bombing, in World War II, it was often used more as an instrument of terror than it was as a way to actually wage war. And so in his mind, he wanted to correct the mistakes that the Air Force was making by still adhering to these kind of World War II approaches to air campaigns.
And also, wasn't the United States Air Force interested in precision-guided ICBM missiles? I mean, if you're going to launch a nuclear war, you want to make sure that your H-bomb lands in Red Square rather than, 30 miles outside Moscow, right? So didn't they want pinpoint accuracy for our ICBMs, and therefore they needed some kind of satellite-guided MX missile?
Well, there's a couple ways to answer that question. I mean, one of the weirdest things about the history of GPS is that at first the Air Force, by and large, didn't really want it at all. Parkinson and his team were really operating as kind of almost rogue elements within the Air Force, not literally because it was being funded, but the vast majority of people in the Air Force did not see the point of GPS at all, as hard as that is for us to understand. They just didn't see why they needed another navigation system. Although what the people who were designing GPS would tell them often is, like, look, don't think of it as a navigation system, think of it as a guidance system. So, as the years went on and the military started to really see the military applications of GPS, they started applying it to a lot of different things. But like you say, ICBMs, I mean, not only is it important that the missile, hit not 30 miles off of where it's supposed to be, apparently one of the most interesting things I discovered in doing this book is that they wanted the missiles they had to explode right over the silos. They couldn't, they couldn't be more than a certain height above it. You would think that with that kind of destruction it wouldn't matter, but it really did. So GPS was a way, once they started figuring out all these applications for it, was a way to make sure that things were really, pinpointed with incredible accuracy, not just somewhat accurate.
Now, also within the Pentagon, there's a celebrated unit called DARPA, and DARPA is credited with, first of all, forming NASA. NASA was one of their offshoots of DARPA. Also, the Internet. The Internet used to be called DARPANet.
Yeah.
And artificial intelligence has been pioneered by DARPA. I see that in your book you didn't mention DARPA. Is that because DARPA missed the boat on this? Or was DARPA also involved in the creation of GPS as well as the Internet and NASA and so on and so forth?
Today, DARPA is involved in studying GPS and I think recommending some improvements. But at the time, they weren't really involved with this. I mean, what's interesting about GPS is that it kind of develops alongside, parallel to the Internet, but it wasn't really a DARPA thing. DARPA did get involved actually in the 80s in wanting to design a very small GPS receiver. They nicknamed it the Virginia Slims Project because they wanted it to be no bigger than a cigarette box. And they wanted something with military precision. But in terms of designing the actual technology, DARPA didn't really play a role in this.
Okay. Now let's talk about the science of the satellite system itself. First of all, how many satellites are there in outer space? And at any given time, how many satellites does your cell phone lock onto?
Well, the entire constellation is about 30 or 31 satellites, depending on how many spares are around. At any given moment, there's 24 active satellites arrayed in orbits such that from pretty much just about any spot on Earth, you should get a line of sight to at least 4 satellites. And the reason is because your phone, or really any GPS receiver, and it should be emphasized that every GPS receiver, whether it's on an ICBM or your phone, works exactly the same way. They always need at least 4 simultaneous lines of sight to a satellite in order to form in order to make a position fix. So you need 4 to really get the actual accuracy that GPS is capable of.
Okay. Now, some people are a little bit gun-shy about cell phones because they think maybe it causes cancer or something. But isn't it true that the cell phone in the GPS is basically a receiver? It doesn't send anything to the satellite at all. It's basically a receiver.
Absolutely, and this is one of the most important things about GPS. It's what's known as a passive navigation system, meaning that you only have to receive signals, you don't have to actually send them. And that's good for a number of reasons. First of all, it means that GPS itself cannot locate you, so people who have privacy concerns, it's things that exist alongside GPS, but not GPS itself. But GPS also, the fact that it's passive is important because the number of GPS users could double tomorrow and it wouldn't affect the system at all, any more than it would affect radio if the number of radios doubled tomorrow, because these satellites do not have to receive anything, they only have to send out these signals.
And I should point out, of course, how useful GPS is. Think of the old days when you're driving down a country road and it's totally dark outside. You can't see any road signs. But today with GPS, you can perfectly navigate on country roads. Isn't it amazing that the versatility of this system?
Absolutely, although of course it cuts both ways, because back in the old days on that country road, you probably got there, most likely you had a paper map in your glove compartment so you could try to figure out where you were. And today, using GPS, the GPS itself might have led you to that country road only for you to discover that it really isn't a place where your car should be, or maybe the geographical data in the map program is even a little bit wrong, and you find yourself lost. I mean, that's such a common occurrence that in Death Valley, California, the park rangers coined a term called death by GPS. And that refers to what happens when people at Death Valley trust their GPS too much rather than trust, say, paper maps or road signs. They can really, lead people astray. And it doesn't mean that you literally have to die from these accidents. Most death by GPS incidents don't even lead to serious injury. They're more kind of just embarrassing, if anything. But that's one of the sort of the hidden things about GPS. One of the sort of unintended consequences is that it's supposedly a technology that makes it impossible to get lost, but in a way it's just made us come up with new ways to get lost.
Okay, well, let's talk about the car, the driverless car. First of all, how accurate is the GPS? There you are driving a car, and to what precision does the satellite system allow you to pinpoint yourself when you're driving?
Well, GPS just by itself, a basic GPS receiver is usually accurate to within a few meters. I think that, as I understand it, what's happening with driverless cars is that GPS is just going to be one of many navigation systems, because you sometimes need more accuracy than a few meters, especially obviously if you're changing lanes or something. But GPS will always play some role, and also you have to have something that can react quick enough, which I don't know that the GPS receiver can be counted on to react quickly enough to know exactly where your car is, at any given second.
Now, of course, there was that fatal accident involving a Tesla recently that shocked the world. However, if you think about the dynamics of that fatal accident, I imagine it wasn't the GPS's fault. It was the fault of the system unable to recognize a truck turning in front of you, but the GPS correctly identified its location. Right. But the radar system, I think, malfunctioned and was unable to tell the driver that there was a truck coming at him. But what are your thoughts?
A very, very important point about GPS. The way, if you talk to people involved with GPS at Schriever Air Force Base, where the master control station is, they'll point out that GPS really can be divided into three segments. There's the space segment, and that's the satellite constellation. There's the control segment, and that's the network of GPS monitoring stations that are spread around the world that monitor the satellites as they come over the horizon and send the data back to Schriever. And then there's the user segment, and that's all of us, all of our GPS receivers. And what they'll tell you at Schriever is, look, we're responsible for number one and number two, for the space segment and the user segment. After that signal leaves the satellite, it's out of our hands, and what you decide to do with it is up to you. And I think the point that they're making is that GPS itself is just a neutral signal that you can do a lot of things with. And really, it's not foolproof, obviously, but it's a very, very well-designed system. So when you hear people talking about GPS accidents or GPS leading them astray, for the most part, what they're talking about is an accident that doesn't really involve GPS itself. I mean, like you say, GPS probably located the Tesla where it was supposed to be. It's just something more like the radar didn't recognize that was a truck coming in front of it.
Okay, and let me ask you another question. When you're driving on a road and well, first of all, let's take a short commercial break, and after the break, we're going to continue a discussion of one of life's totally indispensable instruments, the GPS system. Once again, you are listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. Stay tuned.
This is Science Fantastic. Professor Michio Kaku.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. Once again on Science Fantastic, we're profiling some of the most cutting edge of technologies. And here's one that we take for granted because literally it's everywhere and we depend upon it all the time. And that is a GPS system. And with us today is Greg Milner, author of a new book, Pinpoint, How GPS is Changing Technology, Culture, and Our Minds. Well, Greg, we last left off, we were talking about GPS in the car. And let me ask you a question that's kind of like bothered me sometimes. And that is, we all know that there's road construction and roads are sometimes closed off and with repairs. And so what about the GPS system? Are all GPS systems updated to take into account the fact that roads are under repair almost all the time?
Well, again, we're not really talking about GPS when affecting things like that. I mean, again, GPS is basically giving you a latitude and longitude and altitude, if necessary, reading. It's the things that it's what's called GIS, which, unlike GPS, is not a specific technology, but it's a combination of technologies like cartography and computer science and database management, and it's what creates the sort of deep maps that we depend on today. You know, particularly Google Maps, especially. Now, the companies that run those map programs, they're the ones who are really responsible for keeping geographic data up to date, and because they need to make sure that the latitude, longitude, and altitude signals or calculations you get correspond to actual roads, and so those companies are constantly trying to monitor things like road changes and road construction, and it's, as anyone could probably tell you who's experienced a GPS related error, they don't always stay completely up to date, but they're trying. I mean, they're always trying to be on top of things.
So, in other words, it's not the GPS system itself that may be a little bit out of date with regards to detours and stuff like that. It's the company that then interprets all this data and then puts it into your car system. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the geographic data that GPS uses, in other words, the model of the Earth that is used to turn those turn those calculations into geographic coordinates, that data is handled by the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, an intelligence wing of the Pentagon. So they're responsible for that, but what we're talking about here is making sure that data conforms to the correct road you're on. And yeah, in that sense, that's completely not something that anyone involved in the GPS program per se works on or is responsible for.
Okay, so the next time you wind up on a road that's closed, you can blame not the Pentagon that monitors the system, that maintains the system, but the commercial entity on the Earth that interprets this data for your car.
Yep, in fact, it just happened to me the other day, so I know how frustrating that can be.
Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about other countries and hackers. First of all, is it possible that someone could one day hack into the system and create worldwide havoc as a consequence?
It's a complicated answer. Yes, the basic answer is yes, but what people should realize is that the GPS system itself as a whole is pretty robust. I mean, in order to really disrupt it, people would have to have some sort of method of disrupting the satellites, which are 20,000 kilometers away, or they'd have to have a way to infiltrate the GPS master control station in Colorado, where, and I know this from experience, it's very, very heavily guarded to the extent that there's posters all over the place authorizing the use of deadly force if necessary, and doors that you have to walk through quickly or else an alarm will sound if they're open too long. So GPS as a whole is very, very, very unlikely to go down. However, what is vulnerable is GPS on a local basis. GPS is very easily jammed. In fact, at certain places like on the New Jersey Turnpike near the Newark Airport, there was so much use of GPS jammers, and these are simple devices that can be obtained off the internet. They were used by drivers to try to foil the GPS tracking systems that their bosses use to make sure they know where they are. That it was actually affecting the GPS-based landing system at Newark Airport. So they're worried about jamming, but an even more insidious thing that can happen is called spoofing, and that's when somebody introduces a bogus signal that looks, for all intents and purposes, like the GPS signal and fools GPS receivers in the vicinity into thinking that they're picking up the real thing. And what's really dangerous about that is that there are many, many systems that use GPS that are spread over very wide geographic areas that are all connected. For example, the electrical grid. So if one node of the electrical grid gets a spoofed GPS signal and thinks that power is being routed in a weird way, it could cause cascading blackouts, for example.
Okay, wow. Well, let's take a short commercial break, and after the break, we're going to continue a discussion of the GPS system. Indispensable, but are there weak spots in it? Once again, you are listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. Give us a call. The hotline number is 866-323-2129. Talking about the GPS system with Greg Milner. The number is 866-323-2129.
You're listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. For more information on this and other great talk programs, go to talkradionetwork.com.
Do you or a loved one suffer migraine headaches? Listen to what scientist Kurt Hendricks has to say.
If you are one of the millions of people who get migraines, you need to know about MiGrelief. Hi, I'm Kurt Hendricks, the scientist who created MiGrelief, the patented dietary supplement that addresses nutritional deficiencies in adults and children with migraines. Thousands of physicians and pharmacists recommend MiGrelief.
Call 800-MIG-7354 or visit MIG911.com.
Having a place to go after school will make you a better student. Having an outlet to express yourself will make you a better artist. Having something to do together will make you a better family. At The Y, we're helping build better friends, listeners, writers, swimmers, scientists, and musicians, one chance at a time. Give the gift of opportunity. Donate to The Y at ymca.net/give. The Y, for a better us.
Hi folks, GetTheTea.com is the place where the popular Life Change Tea calls home. But did you know Get the Tea is also where you can purchase GMO-free organic supplements? You can read about their potent power at GetTheTea.com. Also, they just added a YouTube channel called Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. Education about our health can be a life change. Maybe that's why our famous tea is called Life Change Tea. Learn about the trees for life. Our supplements have no fillers, no wheat, no rice, no garbage. And our tea is wow to the body. Make a conscious health change. Educate yourself on the most powerful essence of life, which is your health. You want more? Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Or visit our YouTube channel at Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. And don't forget our fabulous mild detox tea at getthetea.com.
Hello, I'm Roy Masters. In spite of the fact I dislike asking for financial support for my listeners, I realize the consequence of failing to do so. I will have denied my listeners the second chance to express the grace of paying forward the benefits they receive through my radio program and the Foundation of Human Understanding, the organization I founded over 50 years ago. Your support will make a vital difference with the pledge as little as 63 cents a day throughout this year. Consider a donation of $19.95 per month or whatever you can afford and help me help others, especially our returning heroes. So for the sake of the military and millions of broken lives, if you haven't done so already, pay it forward. The benefits which you've received throughout the years from one crying in the wilderness. Go to FHU.com/donate. FHU.com/donate. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
The Foundation of Human Understanding is a 501c3 church.
Science Fantastic.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. Once again, our special guest today is Greg Milner. We're talking about the GPS system, and his latest book is called Pinpoint: How GPS is Changing Technology, Culture, and Our Minds. I've written 3 New York Times bestsellers: Physics of the Impossible, about time travel and teleportation, things like that; Physics of the Future, about the next 50 to 100 years in science; and also The Future of the Mind, telepathy, telekinesis, recording memories, all of which we physicists can do in the laboratory. So find out what I'm up to by going to my website. And by the way, my Facebook site, we have 3 million now, 3 million fans on Facebook. We have 500,000 fans on Twitter, and go to my website to find out what it's all about, mkaku.org. Well, once again, with us today is Greg Milner, author of an exciting new book called Pinpoint: How GPS is Changing Technology, Culture, and Our Minds. Greg, here's a question that's often puzzled me. Let's say you're going through a tunnel. And, well, of course, radio signals, it's a hard slog for them to go into a tunnel like that. So are there blackouts? And what happens if you're in a driverless car and all of a sudden you lose your GPS signal?
Well, yeah, that's a very good question. And yes, there can be GPS disruptions. Especially in urban areas where there's lots of skyscrapers, because they can it can disrupt the GPS signal and make it hard for it to reach them. That's why most transportation things that use GPS also have redundant systems that are based on forms of dead reckoning, meaning navigation that figures out where you are by knowing where you were at a previous point in time. So, for things that really require precision, there needs to be something besides GPS, and I think driverless cars are going to be no exception. GPS alone won't cut it. There are going to need to be things that are a backup for it.
Okay. Well, personally, do you think driverless cars are up to speed in the sense that they're able to anticipate all emergencies, like children, dogs, cats running in front of your car? Do you think that GPS is ready for prime time?
I think that if GPS by itself, will not. I mean, if I were designing a driverless car, I would make sure that GPS was not the only navigation and positioning system used. And by the way, that's the way it is with drones, for example. A drone aircraft all use GPS, but GPS is sort of the bulwark of the system. It's the other navigation systems kind of, a runoff of GPS in a sense. I mean, they're linked to GPS, but they are also independent systems, and there's no way that the drones can operate sufficiently if all they're using is GPS. By the same token, there's no way they could operate without GPS.
Okay, now let's talk about what happens when a malevolent entity, such as another country, decides to, well, first of all, field their own GPS system and perhaps even sabotage other people's GPS systems in a war. So, first question, who else is thinking about building a GPS system independent of ours?
Well, at the moment, the only system comparable to GPS in the sense that it's a satellite-based navigation system that has full global coverage and a complete satellite constellation is the GLONASS system run by Russia. And that's a distant second to GPS because it's not nearly as robust or reliable. Aside from that, China's Beidou system and the European Union's Galileo system are up and running, but they're not complete, and it'll be several years before they are. GPS is really far and away out front the ones that everybody uses, and that's why I think this is a point that can't be emphasized too much. It's certainly something I didn't realize when I started researching GPS, is that everybody in the world uses GPS, and what I mean by that is it's not just an American system. It's provided free to every single country in the world. And by this, and because of that, everybody uses it. And not only that, but a lot of GPS receivers now will integrate these other systems. I believe the iPhones and iPads, for example, are GLONASS capable. In other words, that they oftentimes your GPS readings will be augmented.
Okay, Greg, we're going to have to take yet another short commercial break, but after the break, we're going to continue a discussion of the GPS system. Once again, you are listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku.
This is Science Fantastic. Professor Michio Kaku.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. With us this hour is Greg Milner, author of an exciting new book called Pinpoint: How GPS is Changing Technology, Culture, and Our Minds. And speaking about culture, you have anything to say about the recent Pokemon craze that it seems to have gripped a whole generation of young people addicted to GPS and games?
Yeah, I mean, from what I can tell, more than young people. Yeah, I think it's a particularly fascinating application of GPS in the sense that it's a way for everybody to experience this game that involves real-world locations, and I think it's a fascinating way to just kind of imagine the effect of GPS, that everybody in the world is using it for this thing. I mean, as frivolous as it sounds, I think it's very clever, actually.
Okay, and do you think, therefore, that it could be potentially dangerous with people following GPS into the streets and oblivious of their surroundings?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think, and I've played it a little bit. It's pretty easy to get sucked into, and to the point where you're just walking around looking at your phone rather than anything else. But on the other hand, that's kind of the way I feel like a lot of modern life is lived now anyway, with people walking around staring into their screens instead of keeping track of the world around them.
So you don't think there's any danger about people getting addicted to this or going overboard with this technology?
Well, sure. I think there is. I mean, I think there is with any kind of gaming technology. You can get sucked into it too much. From what I can tell, though, I think it's mostly a benign thing, at least so far. I think the biggest danger, as you say, is people just not paying attention to their physical surroundings, which once again is an ironic result of GPS use, right? That this thing actually can make you less aware of your physical surroundings.
Okay, now let's talk about, well, we briefly touched upon competing technologies, but what happens in case of a war? Generals are paid to win wars, they're not paid to lose wars, which means they have to look at all sorts of nefarious options and possibilities. So what does happen in a war? I mean, for example, killer satellites. Several nations have the ability to kill other nations' satellites. That could really do damage to the GPS, right? If all of a sudden our satellites are wiped out. But what are your thoughts about the darker side, that is GPS and war?
Well, my understanding, and I've talked to a lot of people who are paid to worry about this stuff a lot, and even the ones who are worried the most about GPS vulnerabilities are, for the most part, very confident that the GPS satellites are safe, that they don't think there's a problem there. In terms of what could happen to GPS during warfare, I mean, the obvious question is whether the U.S. military would decide to turn it off, at least for reaching certain parts of the world. And I think that is almost very unlikely to happen. I'm not even sure. I'm pretty sure it's not even possible to do that very easily, to shut it off for different parts of the world. But also, so many people in the world depend on it that it would be an act of just extremely gross irresponsibility for the Pentagon to do something like that. And what people should know is that there is a special GPS channel, or GPS signal rather, that only the U.S. military can use and a few other federal government users, and that's pretty safe. I mean, it's even safer from being hacked. And it's something that only those people can use, while the rest of us make do with the civilian signals.
Well, I heard some stories, and, correct me if I'm wrong, that other nations are preparing to launch their own GPS system because in case of a war, the Pentagon may simply surreptitiously modify the coordinates of certain cities, certain military installations without telling anybody, and so the GPS militarily becomes useless. But what are your thoughts? Is that one of the reasons for other nations trying to field their own GPS system?
I think so, and on a sort of larger level, it's just a way to make it seem like you're not dependent on the U.S., right? I mean, GPS can be seen as like, a form of U.S. hegemony, even if you think it's a benign one, so I think a lot of nations want to kind of guard against that. But I don't think that's a realistic fear in terms of the U.S. deciding to. I mean, what the U.S. could conceivably do is they could do what they did for everybody until the year 2000 when President Bill Clinton discontinued this, which was called selective availability. I mean, the GPS civilian signal used to be dithered so that it wasn't very accurate. It was only accurate to within about the length of a football field, and that was because the military was worried about everybody having the same capability that they did. The reason it was shut off, among others, is that it became clear that there were ways around that. Anyone could figure out a way to get around non-selective availability, and that still holds true. It's even more true today that there be ways to get around that. So I think really that the main upper hand that the U.S. military maintains is that they have this signal that's a little bit more accurate and somewhat more robust. But I don't think that they would ever try to shut off or even interfere with a whole region of the world's GPS signals.
Well, we also have Google Earth, and we have other independent mapping systems, not as good, of course, as GPS, but doesn't that give some kind of assurance that we're not going to, that it'll be very easy to see that someone is tinkering with GPS because we have so many redundant satellites up there in outer space? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think for that reason and a variety of others, if anyone that tried to mess with GPS, it would be people would figure it out pretty quickly, and they'd be able to move to mitigate those threats. So yeah, I think what you say is absolutely true.
And just as an historical footnote, the Russians used to publish maps with the incorrect coordinates of Moscow.
Yep.
Because it was a military secret as to the precise location of Moscow. And the Russians used to publish maps with the incorrect coordinates so that in case of a war, what happened to Napoleon would also happen to, let's say, a Hitler or somebody else.
I mean, they're still trying to figure out, I mean, all the parts of the world still aren't what's called tied together. I mean, there's still different coordinate systems that are being used. And in fact, one of the interesting things about GPS is that it's being used to sort of tie all these things together to make it so that people are all on the same page, literally. I mean, I think as recently as the 60s, the distance between, the United States East Coast and Europe was only known to within like something, I don't know, I think a few miles maybe, or even 20 miles or something like that. We never really knew exactly where we were, and we're still figuring that out.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time. So once again, our special guest has been Greg Milner. His book is called Pinpoint: How GPS is Changing Technology, Culture, and Our Minds. So Greg, once again, thank you so much for being on Science Fantastic.
Thank you.
And once again, if you want to get on Science Fantastic, give us a call. 866-323-2129 is the number to call.
You're listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. Black holes, the cosmos, space, and time travel, medicine, robotics, science, and technology. Professor Michio Kaku, theoretical physicist, graduated from Harvard University summa cum laude and first in his physics class. Received his PhD in physics from the University of California at Berkeley. Now, professor of physics at City University of New York for 30 years. His goal? To complete Einstein's dream of a theory of everything, to derive an equation, to summarize all the physical laws of the universe. The co-founder of string field theory, author of the international bestsellers Hyperspace, Visions, and Parallel Worlds, and voted as one of the 100 smartest people in New York, profiling the latest cutting-edge developments in science, which revolutionize our world and touch our lives. Now, Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku.
This is Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. On Science Fantastic, we profile the amazing, jaw-dropping scientific discoveries which are revolutionizing our world and touching our lives. And this hour, we're going to bring on a special guest today, our friend astronomer Ken Croswell of Berkeley, author of Alchemy of the Heavens, talking about some of the latest developments in cosmic news. Stephen Hawking hit the headlines just a few days ago by announcing that, yes, he wants to have billionaires fund the first starship, a starship that might be able to reach Alpha Centauri, not in hundreds of years, but perhaps in just a few decades. This is revolutionary. All of us have seared into our memory the idea that you have to have the Millennium Falcon or the Enterprise to create a starship that could reach the nearby stars. And of course, Star Trek takes place in the 23rd century. But here comes a bunch of billionaires led by Stephen Hawking saying, no, we could do it on the cheap. we can use off-the-shelf technology, none of this warp drive business, off-the-shelf technology and a few $1 billion to send not the Enterprise but postage stamp computer chips soaring near the speed of light to Alpha Centauri, the nearest star system. This is an amazing proposal, and like I said, it's backed by billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, in fact. And it shows that perhaps there is a way to reach the stars without having to bankrupt the gross domestic product of your country, without having to wait several hundred years before the technology emerges. Now, the basic idea is like a sailboat. Think of a sailboat. It does not have to carry its fuel. No, it uses the wind. Therefore, you can save on weight. Why are starships so bulky? If you've ever seen some designs for a realistic starship, you know that they are incredibly heavy and huge because of the fuel necessary to reach a fraction of the speed of light. In fact, the Saturn rocket, our biggest rocket, would take 70,000 years to reach Alpha Centauri, the nearest star. So how would you save on fuel? Well, you save on fuel by having laser beams on the Earth. And therefore, the sail has no energy source of its own at all. In fact, the sail just carries a postage stamp chip, a chip with so much computer hardware that it has its own camera, its own sensors, its own radio. We're talking about a scientific laboratory on a postage stamp. And we can do that now. Now, of course, there are problems. First, it'll cost billions of dollars. But that's why billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg are putting their pocketbook where their mouth is. And second of all, there is a problem. You have to have energy on the Earth blasting these parachutes to the nearby stars to the tune of 100 gigawatts. That is 100 nuclear power plants worth of energy. Sounds preposterous? Well, actually, it's reasonable. And we're going to bring on astronomer Ken Croswell to talk about this and other cosmic developments. In fact, Elon Musk, another billionaire, says we should nuke Mars with nuclear weapons in order to speed up its terraforming process, to make it Earth-like. Well, once again, you are listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. You can be part of the dialogue. You can call 866-323-2129 and be part of the fun. Leave your name, call letters at the radio station, and the city you're calling from, and perhaps you can get on Science Fantastic. So today we're going to talk about going to the stars with the first starship.
For more information on this and other great talk programs, go to talkradionetwork.com.
Hi, this is DV Kidd. My new book, Taking Politics Out of Solutions, is now available. Why is it nothing changes no matter who you vote for? My book covers the most critical issues eating this country alive, as well as the solutions that are already there that Congress and the agenda-driven media don't want you to know. From the disaster of our economy, why we will never have economic freedom until the Fed is abolished, trade, the meltdown underway called Obamacare, the truth about Social Security and Medicare, and the fraudulent ratification of the 17th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, a very huge issue that affects every American. The answers and solutions are in my book, All Americans Need to Read, because the worst is coming at us like a freight train. To order, go to www.newswithviews.com.
Do you or a loved one suffer migraine headaches? Listen to what scientist Kurt Hendricks has to say.
If you are one of the millions of people who get migraines, you need to know about MiGrelief. Hi, I'm Kurt Hendricks, the scientist who created MiGrelief, the patented dietary supplement that addresses nutritional deficiencies in adults and children with migraines. Thousands of physicians and pharmacists recommend MiGrelief.
Call 800-MIG-7354 or visit MIG911.com.
Hello, here I am, Roy Masters, 55 years on talk radio and still saving lives. Please continue helping the Foundation of Human Understanding by simply donating $19.95 per month. Paying it forward plan will continue saving lives into the years to come. I'm a pioneer in helping our troops to overcome the ravages of PTSD without drugs. Go to FHU.com and then click on the donation page. That's FHU.com.
The Foundation of Human Understanding is a 501c3 church.
Hi folks, GetTheTea.com is the place where the popular Life Change tea calls home. But did you know Get the Tea is also where you can purchase GMO-free organic supplements? You can read about their potent power at GetTheTea.com. Also, they just added a YouTube channel called Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. Education about our health can be a life change. Maybe that's why our famous tea is called Life Change Tea. Learn about the trees for life. Our supplements have no fillers, no wheat, no rice, no garbage. And our tea is wow to the body. Make a conscious health change. Educate yourself on the most powerful essence of life, which is your health. You want more? Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Or visit our YouTube channel at Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. And don't forget our fabulous mild detox tea at getthetea.com.
Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. Today we're going to talk about a controversial proposal being made by Stephen Hawking and a group of billionaires saying that the first starship may be launched from the planet Earth to Alpha Centauri, our nearest neighbor, perhaps in just a few more decades. This is amazing. Forget about Captain Kirk and the Enterprise. Forget about the Millennium Falcon. We're talking about sending postage-stamped chips that are intelligent, blasting them by laser beams to Alpha Centauri, which is roughly, 24 trillion miles from the planet Earth. So with us today to discuss this and other developments is our friend astronomer Ken Croswell, author of a number of great books, including Alchemy of the Heavens. So, Ken, what's your first reaction to the idea that perhaps the first starship may be launched not in centuries from now, but perhaps in a few decades?
Well, if it's really true, I think it's fantastic. Alpha Centauri is one of my favorite stars. It is, of course, our nearest stellar neighbor, but it's a long, long, long way away. It's 7,000 times farther than the planet Pluto, and of course, we only just recently passed the planet Pluto. So I was thinking it might take a long, long time to get to Alpha Centauri, but I certainly welcome any suggestions for how we might be able to get to Alpha Centauri. Certainly, if it's during our lifetime, that would be fantastic.
So tell us a little bit about Alpha Centauri. Is it like our sun? Is it a multiple star system? What is it like if one day we actually visit our nearest stellar neighbor?
Well, in some ways it's very similar to the sun, and in other ways it's rather different. The biggest difference is that it is actually not a single star the way our sun is. We here on Earth are used to a star just being one star, and all the planets go around that one star. Alpha Centauri actually consists of three stars.
Three stars?
Three stars, yes. And we call them, believe it or not, A, B, and C. And those three stars go around one another. The brightest of the three stars is Alpha Centauri A. It is a star remarkably similar to the sun. It has exactly the same yellow color as the sun, the same surface temperature, the same G2 spectral type. It emits a bit more light than the sun, but overall it's much more similar to the sun than most other stars are. So it's a very interesting star just from that standpoint. Alpha Centauri B is the second brightest star in the Alpha Centauri system. It's an orange star, somewhat fainter than the sun. It goes around Alpha Centauri A every 80 years. So the two stars are about as far apart as the planet Uranus is from the sun. But they follow an elliptical orbit around each other, and at their closest, they're a bit farther apart than Saturn is from the sun. And it turns out that you can have stable planetary orbits around either of those two stars, so out to about twice the Sun-Earth distance. So in principle, you could have 4 planets going around Alpha Centauri A with orbits just like those of Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, and likewise another 4 planets, again with orbits just like Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, going around Alpha Centauri B. And then the third and faintest star in the Alpha Centauri system is Alpha Centauri C. It's a long, long way from the other two. It goes around the other two maybe once every million years. It's a dim red dwarf and actually lies closer to us than do the other two stars. So we usually call that dim red dwarf Proxima Centauri. Proxima Centauri is located 4.24 light years from Earth. The bright stars in the system, Alpha Centauri A and B, are located 4.37 light years from Earth.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Is it like we have 2 large stars, each one chasing each other like a dog chases its tail, or like a dumbbell, and then we have a third star which is smaller, which orbits around this dumbbell configuration? Is that how 3 stars can rotate around each other?
That's right. Revolve. Technically,
right?
Absolutely, yeah. So the two inner stars are going around each other every 80 years, and then that distant star is going around maybe once every million years. But since none of us astronomers has yet lived to be 1 million years old, we actually don't know what the orbital period of that one is.
Okay. Now, is it also true that there is a planet that can go around these 3 stars? Do we have any idea at all about a planetary system there?
Well, as a matter of fact, yes. In 2012, astronomers in Switzerland reported a Earth-mass planet going around the orange star, Alpha Centauri B, but lying very close to the star, so close to the star that the planet is surely incredibly hostile. The reason this gives us hope, though, is one thing we know from the Kepler satellite is that if you find one Earth-sized planet going around a star, there are often others. And so the hope is that there might be other Earth-sized planets going around Alpha Centauri B and Alpha Centauri A. Now, the bad news, though, is that some other astronomers have questioned the existence of that planet reported in 2012, and right now it's not clear if that planet actually does exist. So we definitely need further information on the Alpha Centauri system, and in particular on any and all planets there, I think, before we send any probe to the Alpha Centauri system.
And speaking about probes, we all have this image seared into our collective memory that to go to the stars, you need something like the Enterprise, something that's gigantic, the size of a battleship with tremendous amounts of fuel, crew, tremendous amounts of scientific hardware, something that would be centuries into the future. And after all, Star Trek takes place, in the 23rd century? So this is a novel idea, right? Sending postage stamp chips to the nearby planet. So explain how that works. Explain whether or not it's practical to use laser beams to blast these postage-sized chips into outer space like a parachute.
Well, I think it might make a lot of sense because, over time, computers have become more and more powerful, and you're able to put a lot more stuff into a much smaller space. And one of the biggest problems of launching anything anywhere into space is simply the weight. The heavier something is, the harder it is to launch. And so if we can launch really tiny things, really lightweight things that don't even weigh an ounce, that's going to be a much easier task than launching a big, bulky spacecraft, and certainly something like the Enterprise. But as you point out, the Enterprise is from the 23rd century. We're only here in the 21st. So I have no doubt that the first mission to Alpha Centauri will be an unmanned mission. It will not be something like the Enterprise. It will be an unmanned mission, just like the New Horizons spacecraft was to Pluto. So first we're going to send unmanned probes to Alpha Centauri, and then maybe much later we will send manned probes.
Okay, now some people have said that one of the advantages of this scheme is that it uses off-the-shelf technology. We're not doing warp drive. We're not doing wormholes. We're not invoking Einstein's theory of general relativity. We're simply using off-the-shelf technology. I mean, what could be simpler than a laser beam, a chip, and a parachute? So is that one of the attractive features of this, that we don't have to invoke new physics, that we could use garden variety physics for this?
Yes, if your mission depends on there being some new physics that we don't even know about yet, you might be up the creek, if that new physics doesn't actually materialize. And so, one of the nice things about this proposal, even though there are certainly engineering challenges, it doesn't seem to violate any of the laws of physics. So it seems to me we could do this. Now, it's going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to take a lot of effort, and it's not something that's going to be happening in the next 5 years or anything. Nevertheless, it does make a lot of sense to send very lightweight things. The lighter the weight of something, the easier it is to accelerate, and the easier it is to send it out there.
Okay, well, that's all the good news, the fact that it's off-the-shelf technology and it's doable. But now let's go to the bad news. We're talking about energizing these mini parachutes with 100 gigawatts of power. That's 100 nuclear power plants. That is a lot of power energizing laser beams. So that's 100 nuclear power plants. That's as many nuclear power plants as we have on the planet Earth. And they would all have to be aimed precisely. Therefore, do you expect there to be some resistance and some difficulty marshaling that kind of money to assemble the equivalent of 100 nuclear power plants worth of laser power?
Well, it's certainly going to take a lot of energy and a lot of money to do this. There's no question about that. But these are, what you might call engineering challenges. They don't require any new physics. And one of the nice things about using a laser beam to accelerate these mini spacecraft is that the spacecraft themselves don't actually carry any fuel. And one of the nice things about that is, fuel weighs a lot of, it weighs a lot of pounds. And so if you don't have to take any fuel aboard your spacecraft, that again allows you to launch a much lighter vehicle into space, because it's actually the laser beam, which will be, I guess, here on Earth, that will accelerate these mini spacecraft onto Alpha Centauri.
Now, here are the mechanics of how they're going to do this. They're going to assemble 100 nuclear power plants worth of energy concentrated in a laser beam or a series of laser beams. It's going to hit the parachute for 2 minutes. And it's going to accelerate to 20% of the speed of light. That's incredible, meaning that it would reach Alpha Centauri in about 20 years. So are these figures reasonable? Are they ballpark figures? 2 minutes, shooting 100 gigawatts of power at a parachute, sending it to 20% of the speed of light. What are your thoughts? Because we don't think that light has pressure, right? But light has pressure.
That's right. Light consists of photons, and those photons have momentum. And if you stand out in the sun, those photons are hitting you, and you are actually feeling a very, very tiny pressure from those photons, but I've never known of anyone who was knocked over by sunlight. Nevertheless, photons do exert pressure, and so this laser beam certainly can accelerate the spacecraft to high speed if the laser is intense enough. And in terms of the length of time to get to Alpha Centauri, given that Alpha Centauri is a bit more than 4 light years away, that means that light, if we could somehow travel at the speed of light, it would take about 4 years to get there. Given that they're aiming for 20% the speed of light, well, you just multiply 4 by 5, and you get about 20 years as to how long it will take us to get to Alpha Centauri. So the nice thing about that is that we might actually have some prospect of seeing Alpha Centauri in our lifetimes.
Is amazing. Now, some people have said that even if we don't go to Alpha Centauri, we could still go to 20% the speed of light, in which case, to go to the moon, it would only take just a few seconds to go to the moon. And to go to Mars, it would take maybe an hour to go to Mars. And to go to Pluto, maybe less than a day to go to Pluto. So some people are saying that even if we don't go to Alpha Centauri, it could really shrink the time necessary to go to distant objects all the way out to Pluto. What are your thoughts?
Well, that would be a very nice thing, too, because there are objects beyond Pluto. For example, Eris was discovered in the year 2005. It's slightly smaller than Pluto, but about 3 times more distant. So, yeah, if we could accelerate a spacecraft out there, and it wouldn't have to take 9 years, it could just take maybe 3 days to get there, that would be absolutely fantastic. And indeed, we might want to test this Alpha Centauri idea on some of these closer objects, such as Pluto and Eris, see if it works for them, and then launch these, the swarm of spacecraft toward Alpha Centauri. But I should emphasize we really need to know more about the planets going around Alpha Centauri, because once those spacecraft, we need to target those spacecraft through the Alpha Centauri system so that they pass by, close to the planets of the Alpha Centauri system. And right now we don't know of any definite planets going around Alpha Centauri. So astronomers here on Earth need to really observe the Alpha Centauri system thoroughly and discover all the planets that are there, calculate their orbits so that these various spacecraft, when they do, 20 years later, pass through the Alpha Centauri system, they can give us close-up views of the planets of Alpha Centauri if they exist.
Okay, well, let's take a short commercial break, and after the break, we're going to continue a discussion of exploring the universe with astronomer Ken Croswell. We're going to talk about megastructures in outer space. Are they remnants of some ancient advanced civilization? And what about nuking Mars, a program that was advocated by the founder of SpaceX to speed up the colonization of the red planet? Well, and also you can always give us a call at 866-323-2129 and join the fun. Once again, this is Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. Give us a call, 866-323-2129. Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. On Science Fantastic, we're summarizing some of the cosmic news that is hitting the airwaves. We just talked about Stephen Hawking's rather ambitious program to develop the first starship. However, there are other headlines. Another headline was made a few months ago by Elon Musk, founder of SpaceX, the space company that is revolutionizing space travel by pioneering the reusable spacecraft. He's also the pioneer behind Tesla Motors and PayPal. And Elon Musk, the billionaire physicist, made headlines when he said that, yes, he wants to go to Mars, and yes, he wants to perhaps even nuke Mars to speed up the terraforming process. Well, let's talk to Ken Croswell about that idea. First of all, Ken, tell us a little bit about what is Mars like, the temperature. We saw the movie The Martian. Did The Martian get it right?
Basically a cold desert with a very thin atmosphere. It's about 50% farther from the sun than the Earth is, so the sunlight striking it is weaker, and its atmosphere is very thin, less than 1% the atmospheric pressure here on Earth. So the current Mars is a tough place to live on, to put it mildly. And we would want it, if we wanted to terraform Mars, make it more like Earth, we'd want to make Mars warmer. We want to give it a thicker atmosphere. And right now the atmosphere consists almost entirely of carbon dioxide, 95% carbon dioxide. There's essentially no oxygen in the air to breathe. So it's definitely a place that needs some help if you want to live there without a spacesuit.
Now, many people saw the movie The Martian starring Matt Damon, and they know what a bleak environment Mars is. You can't live off the land like the pioneers did 200 years ago. You can't plant anything. And if you want to create oxygen, you have to have a chemical reaction to create any oxygen that you breathe on that planet. So the proposal by Elon Musk, the billionaire behind Tesla Motors and SpaceX, is to go to the polar ice caps where we have plenty of water and nuke it. Well, first of all, what's your initial reaction to the possibility of reforming the environment of another planet using hydrogen warheads?
Well, if you really want to end up living there, I'm not sure it's a great idea to nuke the place. I would worry about radioactive stuff. But there are surely better ways to achieve the goal than to use nuclear weapons, it seems to me.
Well, water once flowed freely on the surface of Mars, what, about 3 billion years ago?
4 billion years ago.
Oh, 4 billion years ago. Liquid water once flowed freely, we think, on the surface of Mars. And so why not again, even though it's a frozen desert? But how would we do something like that? Some people say induce a greenhouse effect. How would you do that? I mean, do you have any thoughts at all about how to begin the process of thawing out a frozen planet?
Well, the greenhouse effect here on Earth actually does raise our temperature about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. The water vapor in the air and also carbon dioxide keep us from becoming an ice-covered planet. The problem with Mars is even though its atmosphere is mostly 95% carbon dioxide, it's just such a thin atmosphere. So if you wanted to establish some sort of greenhouse, a much more substantial greenhouse effect on Mars, you would need either a much thicker atmosphere than Mars has now, or you would need to add very potent greenhouse gases such as methane. Methane is more potent than water vapor or carbon dioxide. But definitely you would want to raise the temperature of the surface of Mars because the mean temperature of Mars is well below freezing. But you're right. In the past, Mars seems to have had a better climate. It may never have been as good as Earth's climate, but we do see in the very oldest terrain on Mars, which dates back some 4 billion years, that there were rivers. We see dried up riverbeds on Mars. So in the past, at least, Mars definitely had a better climate than it does today.
Now, some people point out that methane, atom for atom, is about 20 times more effective than carbon dioxide in terms of capturing sunlight. So, some people say, why not inject methane into the atmosphere of Mars to begin the process of melting the ice caps? However, isn't that a lot of methane? We're talking about an entire planet. And if you saw the movie The Martian, you know how precious every single drop of water is and how expensive it is to go to the red planet. So isn't it basically for perhaps decades or maybe centuries into the future before we can begin to monkey around with the atmosphere of another planet? What are your thoughts?
Oh, yes. This is almost certainly not going to happen in our lifetimes. I mean, think about it. We haven't even sent people on a preliminary mission to Mars yet. So, actually terraforming Mars is something that's probably very far into the future, not something that we'll ever see. But it is in principle possible. There is quite a bit of water on Mars, but it's in the form of ice beneath the surface of Mars. It's in the polar caps, and it's also beneath the surface, especially at the high latitudes of the planet.
And also, if you've seen the movie Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger, at the very end, the ancient Martians actually created a terraforming machine. However, in reality now, we have found evidence of minute quantities of liquid water flowing on the surface of Mars. Isn't that unusual? A planet that we once thought was frozen solid actually has a little bit of liquid water flowing near the craters?
Yes, the spacecraft have seen what look to be gullies being carved into the Martian surface, and one simple explanation for those is some small amount of liquid water somehow being able to flow, even on current Mars. Now, it should be noted that...
Ken, we have to take a short commercial break, but after the break, we're going to continue a discussion of cosmic news from the heavens. With us today is astronomer Ken Croswell, author of a number of great books, including Alchemy of the Heavens. And next, in the next segment of Science Fantastic, we're going to talk about megastructures. Are they evidence of alien life forms in outer space?
Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. For more information on this and other great talk programs, go to talkradionetwork.com.
Spread the word. Now there is powerful nutritional support for migraine sufferers. It's estimated that 35 million people suffer with migraines. Are you or a family member one of them? Well, now there is MigRelief by Akeso Health Sciences. MigRelief is a safe and healthy, non-prescription dietary supplement recommended by neurologists, pharmacists, and pediatricians to address the nutritional deficiencies in both adults and children over 2 with migraines. Just take 2 capsules a day of MigRelief for 3 months and see the amazing difference it can make in your life, or get your money back. No questions asked. There's nothing to lose. Akeso Health Sciences MigRelief has been helping people just like you for 20 years. Try MigRelief and get your life back risk-free with just one call. Call 1-800-MIG-7354, 1-800-MIG-7354, or go to MIG911.com.
Having a place to go after school will make you a better student. Having an outlet to express yourself will make you a better artist. Having something to do together will make you a better family. At The Y, we're helping build better friends, listeners, writers, swimmers, scientists, and musicians, one chance at a time. Give the gift of opportunity. Donate to The Y at ymca.net/give. The Y, for a better us.
Hi, this is DV Kidd. I have some exciting news. My new book, Taking Politics Out of Solutions, is now hot off the press. We cannot solve the cancers eating away at our republic if we don't know how they got started. Do you know that not a penny of your federal income tax funds a single function of the federal government? How can that be, and where does it go? The answers and solutions are in my book. To order, go to www.newswithviews.com.
You wouldn't dare build a house without a blueprint, and neither should you invest without a plan. Hi, Sam Sorbo here. My good friends at Landmark Capital specialize in tailor-made portfolios called Your Financial Blueprint. Let Landmark Capital show you how to control your retirement and safeguard your money from government seizure, protect it from an upcoming recession, and maximize your financial growth in case of inflation. Landmark Capital can show you how to put physical metals, gold and silver, into your IRA or 401k and take physical possession today. Your 401k IRA is a ticking time bomb. The government's racked up our debt to $18 trillion, and there's currently $18.2 trillion in retirement. 12 different countries have already seized their citizens' assets like bank and retirement accounts, and it can happen here any day now, according to the Federal Reserve. Get the facts. Call 855-747-5947, 855-747-5947, or find them at landmarkgold.com. Call 855-747-5947 or visit landmarkgold.com.
Science Fantastic.
Great Scott. I know, this is heavy.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. You can always give us a call at 866-323-2129. And with us today, once again, is astronomer Ken Croswell giving us the latest information about the universe. Well, something that hit the headlines a few months ago is still tantalizing not just astronomers, but science fiction writers as well. An object, many times bigger than Jupiter, apparently went in front of his mother star, dimming starlight by 20%. Now, if Jupiter goes in front of our sun, starlight would be diminished about 1%. So it must have been a humongous object, and some people think that only an alien civilization could have created something that big to dampen starlight by 20% from a nearby star. Some people say, well, maybe as a comet storm of some sort. Other people saying, no, we've exhausted the list of what could be causing it. Ken, any thoughts about what could cause a megastructure, an object that could dim starlight by 20%, not just once, but twice?
Well, probably the more prosaic explanation is going to turn out to be correct. We know that the sun is surrounded by about 1 trillion comets, and we presume other stars have comets too. So a bunch of comets passing in front of the star for some reason or other, maybe there's been some disturbance in that system, might be able to explain these observations. But I would agree with you that this is an ongoing mystery, and I think further observations will be able to shed additional light on this matter. And who knows, maybe we will find it's an alien civilization, but I kind of doubt it.
Okay. Well, it's always fun to speculate. Now, speaking about outer space, let's talk about news concerning black holes. Apparently, there is evidence now of galactic collisions hurling stars into black holes. We know that black holes have lunch. We can see evidence that they eat up whole star systems. But what's this latest press release saying galactic collisions hurling stars into black holes? What's with that?
Yes, most large galaxies, including our own, have a supermassive black hole at its center. And every now and then, we actually observe a star in a distant galaxy falling in to one of these black holes and getting roasted and glowing very brightly. And now astronomers have detected signs that in most of those cases, these are galaxies that have recently suffered collisions with other galaxies. And these collisions reshuffle the stars in a galaxy and can hurl some of them toward the center, where they meet a fiery end.
And galaxies can actually collide with other galaxies, right? How is that in a universe where everything is expanding? And what does that have to do with colliding, with black holes?
Well, everything is not expanding in the universe. The universe is expanding on very large scales, but on small scales, gravity rules. So, for example, the Earth is not expanding. The solar system is not expanding. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, is not expanding. The local group of galaxies, which is the group of approximately 100 galaxies that we are part of, it's not expanding either. And so in these groups, galaxies can move and they can collide under the force of their own gravity.
Okay, well, let's take another short commercial break. Once again, you're listening to Ken Croswell, astronomer, author of Alchemy of the Heavens, and this is Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku.
This is Science Fantastic.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. With us today is astronomer Ken Croswell, our old friend, author of the book Alchemy of the Heavens and a number of other great books, including Magnificent Mars. And we're summing up some of the cosmic news about the universe. We started off by talking about the nearest star, Alpha Centauri, and Stephen Hawking once again is making waves by saying that we should send postage stamp-sized starships blasted by laser beams to the nearest star system. That would make history. Imagine the first starship to reach a nearby star. Then we talked about the planet Mars, the fact that physicist, billionaire Elon Musk, founder of SpaceX and Tesla Motors, has said that perhaps we can speed up the terraforming process of Mars by nuking it. That's right, by dropping a few hydrogen bombs in the polar ice caps. I'm not sure you want to drink some of that liquid water on the surface of Mars, knowing that it was thawed out with a hydrogen warhead. And then we talk about megastructures, strange objects that seem to defy all known laws of modern physics. Something is eclipsing a star that is much bigger than the planet Jupiter. So Ken, let's now talk about the Milky Way galaxy, our home galaxy. Isn't it true that it's dynamic and that, in fact, there's a Smith cloud that is actually plowing into the Milky Way galaxies? So galaxies are not static at all, are they?
Not at all. And the Milky Way is my favorite galaxy. It's, in fact, what the Alchemy of the Heavens, my book, The Alchemy of the Heavens, is all about. And yes, in the 1960s, an astronomer named Gale Smith discovered this cloud. And then in 2008, other astronomers discovered that it's actually moving toward the disk of our galaxy. And so this raised the question of, well, where is it coming from? It's going to crash into the disk of our galaxy in about 27 million years. And now there's new Hubble observations that indicate that this cloud has actually come from the outer part of our galaxy. It was blasted up by something, and we don't know what, because it's a very massive cloud, millions of times more massive than the sun. And so something blasted it up, and now it's falling back down. And the reason we know this is because it contains a fair amount of heavy elements that are made in stars. In particular, these Hubble observations looked at sulfur, and the sulfur content is very similar to that in the outer disk. So that suggests that this cloud consists of gas that was somehow blasted out of the outer part of our galaxy and is now falling back in. The big mystery, though, is what on earth could cause such a massive cloud to be accelerated. We do see much smaller clouds being accelerated by supernova explosions, but this cloud is millions of times more massive than the sun, and much more massive than any supernova-driven cloud known.
Now, when we look at the Milky Way galaxy at night, it seems so serene, it seems so natural, it seems so stable. However, galaxies over billions of years can actually collide with other galaxies, right? So tell us what might happen, 10 billion years from now, when our Milky Way galaxy collides with another galaxy, the Andromeda galaxy.
Yes, the Milky Way galaxy is a giant galaxy, much bigger than most other galaxies in the universe, and so is the Andromeda galaxy, which is now 2.5 million light years away. And we now know, thanks to new Hubble observations, of the total motion of the Andromeda galaxy, and the two galaxies will indeed be colliding. So it's not a maybe, but it will. This collision will happen in about 4 billion years. And so the two galaxies will come closer and closer together. Gas clouds in the Milky Way will hit gas clouds in the Andromeda galaxy and cause the gas clouds to collapse and spawn an enormous number of new stars. So we will join forces with Andromeda and become a very big and bright galaxy as we produce a whole bunch of new stars. That's the good news. The bad news is, after all of this chaos subsides, we are probably going to end up being a giant elliptical galaxy. And elliptical galaxies are not nearly as attractive or as beautiful as spiral galaxies like the Milky Way or the Andromeda galaxy. So the good news is we'll become a much bigger galaxy. The bad news is we'll be not nearly as attractive as we are now.
Now, some people say the real bad news is that the Earth could collide with a star from Andromeda and basically eat up the Earth. Other people are saying that, well, galaxies are mainly made out of a vacuum. Distances are so great between stars that maybe nothing will happen to the Earth. What are your thoughts about whether the Earth will survive a collision with another hostile takeover galaxy?
Well, we are in no danger here in our solar system because the stars are very small compared to the distances between them. So it's very unlikely any star is going to collide with any other star. So the sun is fine, the Earth is going to be fine, the solar system will be fine. What will happen, though, is the gas clouds, which are big. They can stretch over many light years of space. The gas clouds from one galaxy will hit gas clouds from the other galaxy, and this will spark a burst of new star formation. So it will actually be a very good time to be an astronomer if you like to study young stars, because you will have a whole bunch of new stars in the sky to study.
Now, some astronomers have claimed that at the very center of Andromeda, instead of finding one black hole, there seems to be two nuclei rotating around each other. And some people are saying, oops, maybe Andromeda already had lunch, that we're seeing the remnants of perhaps an ancient galaxy that was already devoured by Andromeda. So what are your thoughts? Are these galaxies quite active and they can really eat up other galaxies and perhaps their black holes can merge? What are your thoughts?
Well, definitely giant galaxies grew giant by smaller galaxies coming together. So the Milky Way has grown big because smaller galaxies long ago joined forces to form the Milky Way, and it's the same way with the Andromeda galaxy. It's not clear to me that there really is a double black hole at the center of the Andromeda galaxy. There's a competing explanation that it probably fits the data better that indicates that Andromeda actually only has one black hole at its center. But
okay. Well, and Ken, unfortunately, we have run out of time. Once again, our special guest today has been Ken Croswell, astronomer from Berkeley, author of a number of great books, including Alchemy of the Heavens. So, Ken, thank you so much for being on Science Fantastic.
You're very welcome.
Once again, you've been listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. You can always join the fun. You can always give us a call by calling 866-323-2129. All you have to do is leave your name, call letters of the radio station, and the city you're calling from, and perhaps you can get on national radio by calling 866-323-2129. Good day.